What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Total Takedown. We are talking overs and unders. This one for UFC San Antonio coming up here on Saturday. Show is brought to you by Pub Sports Radio and Superbook Sports. Make sure you hit the like button here for me, and let's get right on into it. The first fight lined up here we've got to talk about is Vidal Tamares taking on Haley Cowan. Total set at 2.5. Women's MMA. The over is minus 185. The under 2.5 is plus 165. And I would lean with the over here. This seems like a spot where Cowan is just going to have her way physically. She's probably going to be Vidal's going to have a striking advantage here in this spot, but she's low volume. She tends to gas out. She's a little bit slow, so I think Haley can get her to the ground once it's there. Vidal is actually probably the more potent submission grappler. She's got an opportunity to catch an arm or catch a neck or something like that, but frankly, I almost think she's sub or bust. If she doesn't get that submission, if Haley Cowan doesn't leave her neck hanging out there, Haley should just be able to kind of sit on top of her chest. I don't know if she's going to finish, so I think it's going to be an over spot, but I wouldn't be shocked if there was a late finish in this one because we have seen Tamel just kind of take her, Tamaris, take her ball and go home. We've seen that happen before on the regional scene, so you never know. Be careful on this one. Second fight of the night, we've got Vinicius Salvador taking on Victor Altamirano, a 1.5 here. It is juiced all the way up to minus 175 for that over 1.5. The under 1.5 is plus 155. You've got kind of conflicting styles here. Victor Altamirano, very durable, pace heavy, cardio warrior, taking on Vinicius Salvador, who's a bit low volume, big power puncher, finishing monster out here. I was going to say finish reliable. I don't know where I got finisher monster from. So if Vinicius Salvador wins, it's probably going under. It's probably going to be quicker. If Victor gets his game going, this thing is going to drag late. Now, it still could be a finish. We saw what Victor did when his opponent gassed out in his last fight, but I'm going to think this is going over 1.5. Victor at least is able to survive the initial onslaught. Even if he gets caught later, I think he drags this into the second and third round. Trey Ogden taking on Manuel Torres, another 1.5 for this one. The over minus 130. The under is plus 110. And I do think this is a spot where we're getting over. Manuel Torres has shown some flashes of brilliance as a kid that could do a lot of good things here in the UFC. Trey Ogden, very impressive in his last fight, very cerebral, showed his ability to outthink his opponent really and then outwork his opponent, piece him apart, get him off balance, and put in a game plan that really kept his opponent guessing the whole time. If he can do that here against Torres, this thing flies over the 1.5. Now, Torres is a round one finisher. That's what this kid does. He comes in here and takes people out of there quick and in a hurry. So you kind of got to count on Trey Ogden to at least be able to survive early on if you want it to get over this 1.5, but I think he can. So we'll say over 1.5 minus 130. Daniel Lacerda is taking on CJ Vergara, a 1.5 here. And folks, it is Daniel Lacerda, Daniel De Silva, whatever you want to call him. He's changed his name up a couple times, but he's the under 1.5 king, right? This number has been smoked all the way down, minus 175 for that under 1.5, because this guy just never gets out of round one. This fight, though, I kind of think CJ Vergara is going to be a little bit on the B side here when it comes to physicality. Because of that, I do think he probably ends up getting a finish. I am picking CJ Vergara, but hot take, I think this gets over 1.5. I think CJ Vergara is going to get this thing into the second round. You might see Daniel Lacerda come out a little bit slower in this fight. He's been given time after time, opportunity after opportunity, and here he is on an 0-3, all three by finish run, all three in the first round. I don't know if he comes out guns blazing again in this fight. I think he might take a slightly different approach, and if that's the case, this fight goes a little bit longer. So over 1.5 plus 155. That's your butthole pucker of the week. I'm very tempted to take that one, but I'm not sure if I've got the balls to do it. We will see. Preston Parsons taking on Trevin Giles. We've got a 2.5 total here. The over 2.5 is plus 145. The under 2.5 is minus 160. This one makes sense to me for an under, just because the way Trevin Giles fights, he has a massive speed advantage. He's very athletic. He's got a lot of experience. Preston Parsons is going to be outmatched on the feet. We will see Trevin Giles do what he wants to on the feet. However, Preston Parsons is a big-time grappler, very powerful, very strong. He's going to be able to put the pace on Trevin Giles, and we have seen that get to Giles before. He's had cardio issues, and that's even up at like 185 when he fought up there. So I wonder what he's going to look like cutting all this weight, facing a primary grappler, somebody that just refuses to get out of his face and keeps on coming at him. I could see Parsons breaking Giles and finishing him in the second or the third round. In fact, I will be sprinkling the round 3 sub there for Preston Parsons, because we've seen Trevin Giles basically goof up and make that mistake and sell the fight down the river in the 3rd round multiple times throughout his career. But that puts us dangerously close to this 2.5. I'm going to say under, but don't bet this one, because this one very, very could run right up to that 2.5 round mark. Lucas Alexander taking on Steven Ocho Peterson. We got another 2.5. The over 2.5 is minus 135. The under 2.5 is plus 115. Now, Peterson, he basically has made his entire career off of being a tough and durable son of a bitch. This guy just doesn't go anywhere. You can't finish him on the feet, and he's impossible to submit. He outscrambled Chase Hooper in his last fight, so Lucas Alexander really needs to come correct in this fight. He needs to come with the game plan of, I'm going to outpoint this guy, I'm going to out-footwork this guy, use my athleticism, and win a decision. If he comes in with that mindset, I think he clearly runs away with this fight. However, if he goes in there thinking, hey, I'm a badass, I'm a monster, I'm going to kill this guy, I can take out anybody that stands in front of me, and he gets in a gunfight with Peterson, that's when you give this guy his path to victory. That's when you let Peterson get in the fight. Peterson will break people simply because they throw the kitchen sink at him and he doesn't go anywhere. And they go, what do I have to do to get this man out of the cage? I could see Peterson breaking him late if the young fighter doesn't come with the right mindset. But I do think we're going to get a full 15 minutes here. I'm saying over 2.5 at minus 135. I'll rely on Steven Peterson to be Steven Peterson and hang out, be in that fight, drag this thing late, and just refuse to go away. Tucker Lutz taking on Daniel Pineda. A 2.5 for this one. Over 2.5 is plus 165. The under 2.5 is minus 185. This one almost smells trappy to me. Like, why did they open a Daniel Pineda fight at 2.5? That just makes no sense. Daniel Pineda is a round 1 or bust fighter. And if he doesn't get the fight done in round 1, he dies in round 2. He's very much like Daniel Lacerda, who we talked about earlier in the show. Tucker Lutz is a strong grappler. This guy's got a big back on him. He's very intelligent. He's got big power in his hands. Like, he set people up well. He can drag this fight to the ground, and he'll make Daniel Pineda tired. Pineda is now 37 years old. He was a round 1 or bust gas bag when he started his UFC career after getting popped for PEDs and getting booted from the PFL. Like, unless Pineda has all the juice back in his system somehow, unless he signed up and got a new doctor going into this one, I just don't see how Tucker Lutz doesn't finish this guy once he runs out of gas. Minus 185 is very pricey. This thing probably should just be bumped down to a 1.5. In fact, it probably should have opened at 1.5. But I'll say violence here. I just don't like the line. I just don't like paying that much chalk on an under. And again, very suspect that they would even give us a 2.5 in this fight in the first place. Albert Duraev taking on Chidi Njokuani. We have a 1.5 here for this one. It's a straight pick 'em, folks. 1.5. Under 1.5 makes sense because Chidi does what Chidi does. We've seen Duraev knocked out 4 different times. Chidi's got a weakness to the grappling. We've seen him finished when the fights hit the ground. However, what I think we are going to see is Albert Duraev coming out very intense, coming out looking to get that win. He was embarrassed in his last fight. I think he takes Chidi down. And if he takes Chidi down, Chidi's a big, big man. Now, he's worked on his submission defense. He's worked on his get-up game. These guys both can gas out and slow down, and this could become a bit of a slog. I actually think these guys burn each other out in that first round. We get over 1.5. I do think Duraev wins, honestly, but I think it probably comes a little bit later in the fight. The 1.5 may get a little hairy because it could come right at that, round 2 mark that the finish takes place after Chidi doesn't have much left to give grappling. But I think Duraev is going to be the one that forces this thing to get into that second round. Minnow Cop taking on Alex Perez. Another 2.5 here. The over 2.5 is plus 145. The under 2.5 is minus 165. And again, I would lean the under 2.5 here in this spot, but I lost a pile on Cop doesn't go the distance in his last fight. I just can't get this kid right. Like, I don't know what it is. Minnow Cop has a personal vendetta out against me. He just doesn't want me to win money on him. I'm not sure how or why, but I just can't cash tickets on him. So take what I say with a huge grain of salt here for this fight. But I think Manel Kopp has everything he needs to finish Alex Perez. Alex Perez's last 4 fights have all not left the first round. You got to think he wants to come out a bit more cautiously in this fight. He knows he's fighting a dangerous finisher. He knows he's facing a power puncher. And Alex Perez is now fighting for his career here in the UFC. Back against the wall. We've seen what happens when these fighters have that position. Generally, they come out slower. They come out with a smart game plan. They try to mitigate the damage, do whatever it takes to get a victory and get their hand raised here. I think that's what's going to happen. So I'm kind of tempted on this over 2.5, except the way Kopp fights, I just think at some point he's going to catch Perez. The plus money on the over 2.5 is very tempting because of the way I see these fighters approaching this fight. But at the end of the day, I think Kopp eventually just finds Perez. I don't think he's the same guy anymore. I do think he's kind of degrading, and degrading is the wrong word there. Deteriorating, maybe? He's taken a step backwards. But I think Kopp is eventually going to catch this guy and put him down. So I'll say under 2.5. Next up, we've got Austin Lingo taking on Nate the Train Landwehr, another 2.5 total. The over 2.5 is plus 105. The under 2.5 is minus 125. And this is another one where I can see it really going both ways. Austin Lingo has been tough. He's been durable. He hits pretty hard. But he really is another guy that's kind of like Steven Peterson. He just has to rely on you breaking yourself against him and him not going anywhere before he finally can take over and get that finish. Nate Landwehr, on the other hand, we've seen some durability concerns, but he has all the EPO on the planet juiced into his body. He's got excellent recoverability, so even after he gets hurt, we see him get right back up and just keep coming. The problem is he goes face first into everything. So at any point in time, Lingo could catch him with a big bomb and put him down. I do think Nate's submissions are going to be tricky here. Lingo, like I said, not the easiest guy to put away, but if you can't knock a guy out, you choke him. I could see Nate Landwehr syncing up one of those Darce chokes or getting to a rear naked choke type of position off of a ground and pound or a scramble. I think this fight goes under, but it's another one that very suspect. Both guys are tough. Both guys are durable. They could drag this thing over instead, not one I'm going to be betting. Macy Barber taking on Andrea KGB Lee. Total again at 2.5, which is classic for your women's MMA fights. Over 2.5 is minus 240. The under 2.5 is plus 210. And I think we spin this one. I think we take advantage of the violence in this opportunity here. Andrea KGB Lee, she's more of a decision fighter, but she's got some wicked BJJ off her back. She's going to have a significant striking advantage here in this fight, so she can hurt and bust up Macy Barber if this fight stays on the feet. Now, if it gets to the ground, she gets taken down constantly, but she's got good hips. She rolls for submission. She scrambles. Like, she could open up something on the mat as well. Macy Barber, ever improving. We've seen she's finally starting to turn that corner in this fight. I think she's finally going to show us Macy Barber 2.0. We saw in her last couple of fights, she's shown big leaps and bounds in her game and her skill set. She's 24 years old, so she's only getting better, and she's hungry and she's mean. I think Macy Barber shows us big improvements in this spot, and Andrea Lee has been known to kind of slow down and gas out the deeper the fight goes. So if Macy Barber does go to that grappling game, something we've seen work on Andrea Lee before in the past, she should just be able to bully her. Those big clinch elbows that Barber landed against I'm not sure Andrea Lee is taking those. If she gets on the ground and crucifixes her, I'm not seeing Andrea Lee getting out of that position. So I do think there's finishing upside by both women, which gives us that under 2.5 and a nice juicy plus 210. I'm going to be looking at Macy Barber inside the distance props, I think, folks. I actually think Barber probably finishes Andrea Lee in this fight. Yana Kunitskaya taking on Holly Holm. We have another 2.5, and this one is maybe the opposite of the last one. Classic women's MMA. We're going over 2.5, minus 270. I don't know if I need to spend too much time on it. Yana is coming back from having a baby, so there is that chance that she is not the same fighter when she returns. That's an angle that's been very profitable. Fade those women their first fight back after having a baby. Holly Holm, however, is 41 years old. We saw her last fight. We've seen her slow down. She's been more susceptible to being put in bad positions and submission holds. She's gotten out of them, but she is starting to fall off the cliff. The end is near for Miss Holly Holm. So I do think Holly wins. I think there's a chance Holly beats Yana Kunitskaya inside the distance. Again, another situation where she gets in a scramble and grabs a neck. She finds a rear naked choke. Maybe even the crucifix once again, because that seems to be very effective in women's MMA. But Yana Kunitskaya also is vicious. She likes to come forward. She throws spinning shit. She hits hard. So if Holly Holm has slowed down enough, there's a chance Yana could finish her. But I think at the end of the day, Holly's going to get the better of Yana Kunitskaya, and when she does that, she pushes people up against the fence. She grinds the clock off, she slows the fight down, and I think this thing's going to go over 2.5. I said I wasn't going to talk that long on it, and then I spent like 2 minutes breaking it down, so I apologize. Main event time. Corey Sandhagen's taking on Marlon Chito Vera. This is the one we're all here for. Total set at 4.5. The over 4.5 is minus 155. The under 4.5 is plus 135. And I mean, everything shouts that this should go over, right? Marlon Vera is incredibly durable. This guy just refuses to go away. Corey Sandhagen, he also has been durable in his career. Good footwork, makes you chase him, sets up flying knees. But we've never seen that kind of thing work on Marlon Vera. This guy just cannot be knocked out. And he doesn't even wear damage, frankly. So this thing going over makes a ton of sense. I just can't kick the feeling that Marlon Vera is going to show up like we've never seen him before this time. I know he starts a little bit slow. We're going to get at least 2 rounds out of these guys because that's the way Marlon fights. But when Marlon decides to press on the gas, there's no stopping it. I think Corey Sandhagen has been posting pictures of him working with guys like some of the Bellator guys like Rufian Stotts and stuff like that, there's a chance Corey Sandhagen comes out with a wrestling game plan in this one, and I think that's a bad idea. People forget Marlon Vera is a submission grappler. He started off as a primary grappler in his UFC run and really got to the striking as he developed. He's dangerous on the ground. He's extremely dangerous on the ground. And how have we seen Corey Sandhagen finish? Via submission. That's right. And I think Marlon Vera is very live for the sub here in this spot. So I'm hopeful that that's the way this thing goes. I jumped on this thing early thinking I was going to be smart and get ahead of the line. Superbook Sports actually has the sub prop at plus 850. So it's actually going to be better than what I got when I placed the bet. But I do think that under is totally alive in this spot. The only problem for me is, you guys know the rules. We need both fighters to contribute to either the under or the over. And we cannot get both guys contributing to the under here simply because Marlon Vera doesn't finish or get finished ever. So if there is a finish, it's coming from Marlon Vera. It's never coming from Corey Sandhagen in this spot. So you have to say over, like, for the sake of the show. But like I said, there's hairs on the back of my neck and my gut that just scream at me that Marlon Vera is going to find a way to finish Corey Sandhagen and get it done in that under 4.5. So be careful with that total. That's the total takedown, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Catch me tomorrow for the undefeated post-weigh-in show, the best damn gambling show of your MMA week. Hit the like button on your way out. We'll see you tomorrow. Let's roll.